When the shadow of the end of the world loomed like a dark cloud, my heart was filled with gratitude for being reborn and resentment towards the past. In my previous life, the end of the world came and I was ruthlessly pushed out of the house by my own sister. At that moment, my heart was colder than the cold wind at the end of the world. I watched myself become food for the zombies, and I wish my mother could see me and give me a hand. But she just hugged her sister tightly and ignored my cries for help. Her cold eyes still hurts my heart. In this life, I no longer have illusions. I started to stock up like crazy: food, water, medicine. I didn't miss anything I could stock up. I want to build a safe haven for myself, lie down in this apocalypse, and never be hurt by anyone again. I want to make those who have abandoned me regret what they have done. 2 months before the end of the world, I opened my eyes and found myself lying on a soft bed. The sun shines warmly on me, and there is no fishy smell in the air. Have I traveled through time? I opened the window and heard a lot of noise downstairs. Where are the zombies? Are they still biting me? I glanced at the time. It was only June, early summer. The zombie outbreak happened in August. The weather was extremely hot, and there was not even a drop of rain. Crops were sunburned to death. Animals died of lack of water or heat stroke, and even many people who worked outdoors were sunburned to death. At first, no one paid much attention to it, thinking it was just extreme weather. However, the plague among animals began to spread. Cold-blooded animals died first, and then the disease spread to pets. Pets bite their owners, and the owners mutate and attack humans crazily, spreading the disease very quickly. As long as there is blood contact or a bite, the entire country may fall within a few days. Recalling these, I unconsciously looked down at the white jade Bodhi in my hand. Once, at the moment when a zombie bit my neck, I felt a warmth from the Bodhi pendant I was wearing on my right hand. Could it be that I traveled through time because of it? I bought this Bodhi tree when I was traveling in Beijing 5 years ago. I have been using it for many years, and it has become shiny. Could it really have special effects? I suddenly remembered the scene in the fairy tale drama and decided to give it a try. I took the knife and cut my palm, then dripped the blood onto the Bodhi tree. Sure enough, a warm feeling quickly spread throughout my body. At that moment, a space emerged in my mind. Could it be a storage space? I immediately put the food in the refrigerator and started to think. I had about 2 months, and the apocalypse would happen in about a month, so I still had time to prepare. Thinking back to my last life, I returned to the countryside with all my supplies and decided to be with my family. However, when my parents weren't paying attention, my sister pushed me away. Until the last moment, I didn't understand why she did it. Holding onto the door tightly, I asked her why. She said coldly, "You took away my father's love and took away a part of my mother. You shouldn't exist." At that moment, I was so shocked that I let go of her hand. She pushed me away and slammed the door. I heard the roars of zombies approaching, and my mother saw me calling for help but lowered her head. I don't blame her, nor do I blame them. Although I understand my mother's unconditional love, my sister's recklessness may be due to this excessive love. Whenever I told my mother not to pamper my younger sister so much, I was always met with her harsh rebuttal and my younger sister's cold eye roll. "She's your younger sister. You should give in to her." This is what I have heard the most. I take it for granted that my younger sister is always satisfied. Maybe I have already seen the ending, so I have never been sad. Maybe I have never seen hope, so I have never been disappointed. I opened my eyes, immediately picked up my phone to check the balance, and tried hard to remember the lottery numbers I had purchased in the past few days. I have the habit of buying small lottery tickets regularly, and I always record them. Although it is a bit difficult to remember all the numbers, I should have no problem winning the second and third prizes. I quickly went out and went to a nearby lottery store to buy the approximate numbers I could remember. With full confidence, I bet 100 times at once. When I got home, I got out a pen and paper and started planning my stockpiling. I work for a foreign company in a big city and rent a small single room. But this place is not good. When the end of the world comes, I can't stay here and I have to solve the housing problem. I opened the space and checked what was stored in it. The ice cream was still hard and everything else was the same. The time and the space seemed to be still, so it was safe. However, I also tried to put living things in, but I couldn't put them in. After working for a few years, I had some savings and a second-hand junk car. So I went to a large supermarket. After experiencing the post-apocalyptic world, I felt a little nostalgic and a little overwhelmed when I saw the crowded places. Then I started to go shopping like crazy, buying fruits, cakes, and snacks, all of which I hadn't eaten for a long time. There are milk tea shops everywhere. I placed a lot of orders at once, hundreds of cups in each shop, with all kinds of flavors. I knew the end was near, and I planned to spend all my savings. Then I went to my favorite dessert shop, bought some, carried them to the car, and stored all the things in the space. Then I went out again to do some more shopping, went to the restaurants I usually go to, and packed a lot of food. When people ask me about it, I say it's a company team building, and there are many people eating. It's still early before the doomsday, so I won't attract too much attention if I do this. In order to avoid being exposed, I placed orders in batches, purchasing the food delivery platform, supermarket software, Taobao, and JD separately. Finally, the day to claim the prize arrived. I opened the lottery website and saw the winning number. It was indeed the first prize, 100 million, and after deducting taxes, I finally got 800 million in cash. After that, I continued to shop without worries, going to the supermarket every day. My plan to buy a house was also progressing steadily. First of all, I need to find a villa that has been fully renovated, preferably in a small city with few people. There was about a month left before the end of the world. I sorted out all the food and put all the useful supplies into the space. Then I went to a sparsely populated city and bought a standalone villa. This villa complex is built on the mountain, with a total of more than a dozen buildings, and each household is far apart from each other. Most of the customers here are rich people. I'm the only one who has bought the house since it was first launched. Except for the handsome security guards and a few cleaning ladies at the door, no one bothers me. Next, I started to renovate the villa. I like the decoration style of some bloggers on the internet, with secret passages everywhere, connecting different areas. Since I had plenty of money, I hired 2 construction teams to work day and night. I live in a hotel and go out to buy supplies every day. Pots and pans, toothpaste, toothbrushes, towels, shower gel, bed sheets, paper towels, and all kinds of seasonal clothes are all available. I also prepared all kinds of seasonings, drinks, and items that girls need during their menstrual period. I also stocked up on vegetables, fruits, rice, milk tea, cakes, hamburgers, fried chicken, French fries, and pizza. Every few days, I would go to the slaughterhouse to buy pork, lamb, chicken, seafood, etc. In order to cope with extreme weather, I also bought a lot of hot packs and ice cubes just in case. I also prepared a lot of disposable items, including disposable bowls and chopsticks, shorts, and other necessities. Because of the water shortage in the apocalypse, I prepared a lot of cat litter and vacuum machines, which can seal up smelly garbage, save space, and prevent odor. Everything is almost ready, and I begin to wait for the end of the world with peace of mind. During the day, I spent a few hours at home watching the progress of the construction, and in the evening, I went shopping. Each time I order takeout for 20 people, I eat a little myself and put the rest in the space so it won't attract attention. After more than 10 days, there was only 1 month left before the end of the world. The house was almost finished, and I spent a lot of money to let the construction team speed up the progress. Next, I focused on the fine decoration of the house. First of all, there is surveillance. Cameras are installed in every corner of the room. All the doors are replaced with bank anti-theft doors. The windows are covered with anti-theft glass, and super thick iron plates are installed behind the windows. Next, I arranged the generator, and the workers placed it in a hidden corner and wrapped it with sound insulation cotton. In order to store water, I installed an oversized water tank on the balcony to collect rainwater. The construction team also built several secret bases for me, one of which leads directly underground from the living room fireplace. The underground space is designed to be hidden, with no stairs and only a few secret entrances. Each floor has a passage leading to the underground, which can be locked once inside, preventing outsiders from entering. I installed several hidden cameras, which I assembled myself, and their exact locations are known only to me. In addition to these, I also bought a TV, a computer, a game console, purchased various books, and downloaded a large number of novels, TV series, and movies. I focused on the basement level and the layout of the house. After many things, I felt extremely insecure. My heart was always filled with fear, and I didn't dare to trust anyone. Only a closed environment could calm me down. In order to cope with the coming apocalypse, I have prepared a large amount of supplies. I bought extra-large capacity power banks and storage devices, sofas, massage mattresses, puzzles, Legos, and other recreational items, as well as fitness equipment and a treadmill. Of course, the most important thing is medicine. I regularly go to different pharmacies to buy cold medicine, anti-diarrhea medicine, painkillers, cough medicine, gauze, etc., and place orders online and offline. I have prepared almost all the medicines I can think of. Through some connections, I also got some antibiotics, anesthetics, and morphine that were not available on the market. At a considerable cost, I also bought guns and various knives for self-defense. With money, you can solve anything. Damn capitalism. During this period, I took time to visit my home in the countryside and brought back rice canned food, instant noodles, compressed biscuits, water, salt, etc., which filled the room that once belonged to me. My mother asked me, "Why did you buy so many things?" I answered, "I was assigned by my company these days. I might have to go abroad for a long time. I bought some things for you." She said, "You don't need that much, do you?" I smiled and said, "Recently, the situation in neighboring countries is tense. Just in case, prepare more. Prices may go up in the future. You can also buy some vegetables and fruits to store in the cellar." Then I filled a refrigerator and 2 freezers with fresh meat and frozen food from the car. The kitchen was filled with preserved meats, which lasted a long time, and I brought a lot of hams. I told my mother that these would last a long time. I also grabbed a few quilts, a super thick-down jacket, snow boots, and gloves. Then, I gave her a small portion of the money I had on me, although I didn't dare give her more, because I was afraid of scaring her and also afraid that my sister would find out. I told her that it was an advance payment for my overseas allowance and asked her to use it to buy more supplies to fill the cellar. I know that once rural women realize the seriousness of the situation, they will blindly believe it. So, through some words, I successfully prepared my mother for the end of the world. After all, they live a long time in their previous life, and in this life, the supplies I gave them should be able to help them survive this crisis. Before I left, my sister said sarcastically, "Your parents raised you up, and now you're just going to go abroad to enjoy your life. Do you want me to take care of them alone in the future? I don't plan to stay at home. I'll go abroad after I finish my studies." I replied, "Wait until you finish your studies. For now, stay home and don't go out." She rolled her eyes at me and said, "What's it to you?" Then she turned and left. Suddenly, she turned her head again and said, "By the way, have you bought the cushion and perfume I want for me? Transfer some money to me. I want to get a manicure, but I don't have enough money." I replied, "You're still in high school. Tattoos, nail art, and hair dyeing are not suitable for you, and the school will not approve of it." When she heard what I said, she was so angry that her eyes almost rolled up to the sky. "If you don't want to give it to me, forget it. Don't come here to preach to me. I don't want to listen." When I turned around, I found my mother next to me. I wanted to ask my mother to take care of her, but she just said to me, "She is older now, and I'm also older. I can't control her anymore. If I tell her, she'll start a fight, and her body won't be able to handle it. So let her be." I felt dissatisfied and was about to retort, but my mother stopped me. "Don't you have work to do? Go quickly and don't delay your work." As disappointing as ever, I almost didn't want to look at her face anymore. She's always afraid that I will quarrel with her baby, so she always asks me to be patient and says that suffering a loss is a blessing. I smiled, this time without arguing, and turned away. Perhaps this family would be better off without me. I returned to the house I had built for myself and began preparing to stay indoors. I put all the food inside the space and only put some inconspicuous food on the periphery. The weather is getting hotter and hotter, and TV occasionally reports news about outdoor workers and poor elderly people dying from the heat. No one paid much attention to it at the beginning, but I knew that everything had started. I started going out less, gradually stockpiling water and using the freezer to freeze ice cubes. When I go out occasionally, I buy some food from various stores and order takeout every day and put it in the space in an unobtrusive way. After the temperature exceeded 50 degrees Celsius, I decided not to go out and stayed at home watching the news every day. At first, the outside world seemed peaceful, but gradually, people began to rush to buy supplies. First it was rice, then water, and even paper towels. After a while of scrambling, things finally calmed down. Many people thought that those who rushed to buy things were fools who believed everything they heard, so the rush to buy gradually subsided. The moment everyone started panic buying food, I stopped going out at all. The villa was deliberately designed to look uninhabited. All doors were locked and windows had iron gates drawn. I observed the movements around me through the telescope on the top floor and the surveillance cameras outside the villa. The countdown to doomsday has entered its final 3 days, and I have temporarily moved all the necessary supplies to the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor is connected to the rooftop, which is a commanding point from where you can see everything in the distance. The countdown to doomsday entered its last day, and the sky remained calm, as if it was the calm before the storm. This day is a working day, and people outside are still working as usual. I have been following the trending searches on Weibo, and suddenly, a trending search went viral. Shocking, zombie-like creatures suddenly appeared at the airport and city. Then, several videos made the headlines, and people reposted them. I knew the end had begun, but soon the trending search disappeared. The internet fell into silence for several hours until the zombie video appeared again. Zombies appeared in city, unkillable zombies. The disease spreads very quickly by biting people. Then a new round of panic buying began in City B where I live. Because zombies spread very quickly, they have spread to City B. Many people who went out to grab supplies were attacked by zombies. Wailing, roaring, and screaming filled the land, and blood dyed the streets red. Black crows circled, the sun was high in the sky, and the whole world seemed to be suffocating. People could only flee helplessly. Where's the exit? In the blink of an eye, I have fallen into the abyss of despair. I recalled once again the moment when the zombie outbreak occurred, and a deep sense of powerlessness and insignificance welled up in my heart. I huddled in my bed, eyes open, not daring to move. As night fell, the fear grew stronger. Although I had experienced the apocalypse once before, I was still afraid and didn't dare to face it. When the end of the world came, there would occasionally be status updates on my phone, and people would send me messages to greet me. A month ago, I posted a message saying that I would stop using WeChat due to a job transfer. So, for the time being, no one will remember me, and no one will ask me. Moreover, I did not reply to those messages. My experiences in my previous life made it difficult for me to trust others, so I was like a turtle hiding in its shell, unwilling to show up. I was in the countryside, with almost no one around. I stayed in my room all day, and gradually I felt a little better. I have built a hard shell for myself. I am not afraid. Turning on the projection, a variety show started playing in the room. When I feel depressed, I can only watch some funny shows to relax. I poured a glass of milk and watched the funny clips on the screen, feeling lucky. In the evening, I took out the spicy hot pot that I packed from the restaurant. It contained meat and vegetables, and I was very satisfied with it. I picked up my phone to check the real-time news. The news called on everyone to stay at home as much as possible, keep quiet, and protect themselves. I looked through several zombie videos. In some of them, a group of strong boys smashed zombies to death with sticks, broke out of the encirclement, and fled to a truck on the side of the road. With examples, there are imitators. As a result, people fighting zombies for food can be seen everywhere. Gradually, the scenes in the video became bloodier. The bottom of society began to fight fiercely. Many weak women became victims, and some are even willing to sell themselves in order to survive. These videos have changed my worldview. Of course, where there is oppression, there is resistance. Guns and bombs began to appear, and no one knew how those people got these weapons. As the days went by, I watched the farce after the zombie outbreak on my phone every day. A few days later, the internet was disconnected. I could no longer watch the video, and I couldn't use my phone to see the outside world. In fact, it was better to be disconnected. The more I watched, the more upset I became. Those ugly displays of human nature are infinitely magnified in the face of disaster. In the past, before the apocalypse, videos on the internet were normal, but once the zombie outbreak occurred, the police were unable to control it, and the evil deeds were no longer restrained. The evil in human nature is magnified, and the bottom line of society seems to collapse in an instant. Thousands of years of civilization seem to have completely disappeared in just a few days. Perhaps hell is full and the devil has descended. Today marks 1 month since the zombie outbreak. I was sitting on the sofa with a cup of milk tea, watching TV series, and my life was extremely boring. It hadn't rained for many days, and it was so hot outside that it was about to explode. I also didn't leave the house for almost a month, and I didn't even open the window. My skin hadn't seen the sun, so it turned a little pale. The electricity had been cut off for a long time, but the solar panels and generators were still there. Electricity was not a problem, and I didn't dare to turn on high-power appliances, let alone the air conditioner. To fight the scorching heat, I took a piece of ice and placed it under the fan. The wind from the fan brought a slight coolness, which slightly soothed the heat in my heart. I watched it play for a while, got up and went to the gym to exercise, and in the blink of an eye, it was evening. I thought about what to eat today for a long time, and finally found a pickled fish in the space. After eating, I vacuumed the garbage and put it into the space. Then, I walked around the house a few times, looked at the surrounding environment, and then went back to the small room and picked up the tablet to continue watching the show. Zombies are rampant, and there are no new shows. It's so lonely. I'm still living a miserable life day by day. The world outside is no longer peaceful, and food and daily necessities are now the hard currency. Some people sell their bodies for compressed biscuits, and some people kill people without hesitation for a cigarette. In the middle of the night, a strong wind blew outside the house, and the branches were rustling. I know that this means the hot weather is about to pass, and after the extreme heat, cold will follow, just like entering the Ice Age. Watching the rustling sound of the wind outside, I recalled my experience in my previous life. After the extreme heat, the temperature began to slowly drop. Then came heavy rains, which lasted for a whole month, and the water level gradually rose, flooding many cities. After the rain stopped, the temperature dropped suddenly and extremely cold weather hit. Many people could not survive because they did not have enough cold-resistant supplies. I died in the extreme cold. At that time, most zombies were frozen in the water, but for some reason, a group of zombies suddenly appeared in our village, like a swarm of locusts passing through. Now that I think about it, the country must have started to eliminate the zombies, and those sudden groups of zombies might have been driven here. As long as I can survive the extreme cold, I can survive. Thinking of this, I open a bag of potato chips and pour myself a cup of lemon tea. The weather is too hot. Fruit tea saves life. Then I took out the pineapple fried rice and tom yum goong pak from the Thai restaurant, which is really suitable for hot weather. After the midnight snack, I fell asleep. I woke up at noon the next day, sweating all over. Get up and wash. Water is very scarce now, so I reuse my bath water, using it once for washing and then for watering the vegetables. I took out a cup of coffee, a bowl of porridge, and a fried dough stick from the space. After eating, I checked the monitoring for night today and found nothing abnormal, but the temperature was obviously 1 or 2 degrees lower than the previous few days. Then, I went to the second floor to work out and ran for 2 hours. Then I picked up my tablet to continue watching TV series. The peaceful days did not last long. As the temperature gradually dropped, many people began to no longer fear the sun and went out of their homes to look for food. After all, the weather is too hot, the appetite is poor, and it is easy to get heat stroke outside. Under the scorching heat, everything is relatively calm, but as the temperature gradually drops, crime and violence begin to spread. Recently, the temperature has dropped to 30 degrees, which is much more comfortable than before. The cool breeze at night brings a touch of coolness. I took a lounge chair, a bottle of red wine, and sat on the top floor to look at the stars. This is in the mountains. Usually there are no people, so there are no zombies. Zombies are mostly concentrated in cities and crowded places. The air is fresh and pollution-free, and there are so many stars that it makes people nostalgic, as if they have returned to the summer of their childhood, with the evening breeze and the chirping of insects accompanying everything. I took out a bottle of watermelon soda from the space, and the recliner swayed, and I actually felt a sense of peace and tranquility. Suddenly, I heard an explosion in the distance, followed by a thick cloud of smoke. It should be coming from the town at the foot of the mountain. Oh no, someone is coming. Not far away, a group of violent people are walking towards this side. If there were only 1 or 2 people, they wouldn't be able to make such a big noise. To survive in the apocalypse, there must be a lot of people, and their fighting power cannot be weak. The most terrifying thing in the apocalypse is often not zombies, but encountering people. In my previous life, our house had a good geographical location. It was a single-family house with a small vegetable patch behind it, so we basically never met anyone. Besides, my father was capable and the cellar was well-stocked, so if we ate sparingly, we would have no problem surviving. But many people started killing each other because of food shortage. I have personally seen sons drive their parents out. Those elderly people who were driven out did not die at the hands of zombies, but were eaten alive. My father didn't let us watch these things at that time, nor did he let me get involved. I also believed in him, so I dared to leave my family in the countryside. When I came back to my senses, I realized that the group of people must have looted along the way. If they found me, I would be in trouble. I quickly put the things on the terrace into the space, then went into the room and put the other items away one by one. After checking all the equipment, I put the refrigerator, generator, food, and clothes into the space. For those items that did not need to be collected, I covered them with a layer of white cloth and then took out a few handfuls of soil from the space and scattered them in the air to create some dust, making it look to people outside as if no one had lived here for a long time. Only necessary furniture, stools, chairs, sofas, and tables were left to prevent uninvited guests from taking advantage. After completing these, I went to the basement and began to arrange the basement. By the time I finished all this, it was already late at night. I forced myself to sleep because only by having a good rest could I have enough energy to deal with the next situation. The next morning, when I woke up, everything was quiet. All the equipment was connected to the basement, so even if I was underground, I could see what was going on outside. At daybreak, a group of people drove up the mountain. 2 modified jeeps were driving fast, getting closer and closer. My heartbeat quickened, but then I thought I was underground, they couldn't find me, and I gradually calmed down. The roar of the car came from far away and finally stopped nearby. I saw them get off the car through the surveillance camera. There were 9 of them, 6 men and 3 women. There was a pickup truck inside, dragging their luggage and supplies. They seemed to have developed an interest in a mansion on the top of the mountain and began to explore it room by room. The building complex where I live is a super high-end residential complex, with only a dozen villas in total, each of which is fully furnished and ready for direct move-in. Although the soft furnishings were not complete, all the villas were almost identical. Only mine had been specially renovated and had enhanced defenses, so they could tell it was different at a glance. So they quickly locked their target on me and came over in less than half a day. Although I installed security doors and windows to prevent them from getting in easily, I knew it was only a matter of time. Even if they couldn't get in right away, they would soon find a way. They were near my house, and I could clearly hear their conversation through the installed eavesdropping equipment. A fat man cursed. "Damn it, there must be something big here. It's decorated so well. He must be rich or noble. Hurry up and pry it open for me." A red-haired man said, "Boss, this place looks uninhabited." "Stop talking nonsense and pry the door open," said the fat man, slapping the red-haired man hard. It was already noon, so I had lunch before they came in. Time is always squeezed out like this. I got a spicy hot pot with rice, and it was really satisfying. The group of people persisted for several hours under the high temperature and finally pried the door open a little. With the combined efforts of several people, they suddenly broke open the gate. The fat man in the lead spat and cursed. "Bah, I want to see what kind of nest is so precious that it has such a heavy door. No matter how expensive the house is, it has to be given to me now. Lao-wu, Lao-lu, bring the car and stuff in, and call everyone else." I heard them in the basement that they had opened the door and were about to come in. The first one to be attacked was the fat man. He had a scar on his face that extended from his ear to the left side of his cheek, making him look very scary. Following closely behind was the red-haired guy, who was biting a piece of unknown grass in his mouth, revealing his yellow teeth, looking a little disgusting. Standing next to the fat man was a thin man with little flesh on his face, like a walking skeleton. Behind him was a shorter man with a mustache, holding a large bag of tools. The 4 people in front looked quite old, probably over 35 years old, while the 2 people in the back were relatively young. A man with a shaved head, dark skin, hardly speaks, and looks a little dull. The last person who followed was a man, wearing glasses, who seemed to be more educated. Then, 3 women also entered the villa. The first woman was wearing heavy makeup, a tight dress, and not much luggage. As soon as she entered the door, she looked around with a satisfied expression on her face. Judging from the fact that she was still able to put on makeup, it was clear that she was doing well in the apocalypse. The 2 women following behind her were carrying a lot of luggage. One was wearing a white dress. Her face was pale, her long hair was tangled, but her eyebrows and eyes were delicate. The last one was wearing a neat denim jacket and shorts, with her short haircut making her look capable. She was dragging the pots and pans she had taken from the pickup truck. As soon as we entered the villa, the fat man with the scar on his face looked dissatisfied and cursed. I thought it was a good place, but the broken doors outside are so secure. When I left, I put everything I could take away into the space, leaving nothing behind for them. Scarred Fatty kicked the wall several times in anger. After working for several hours, they finally pried open the gate. As time passed, it was already evening. Because there will be strangers staying here these few days, I decided not to eat food with strong odors for the time being, and try not to cook and eat simple food. I took a sandwich from the space and made a bowl of salad, which was just right for a fat-reducing meal. The people living upstairs at least brought me some fun, and at least I was no longer lonely. I observed every move upstairs as if I were watching a TV drama, and I found it quite interesting. The people upstairs also started cooking. They put a handful of rice into the pot, and then added a piece of black stuff. The pot was almost full of water. Then a bunch of wild vegetables were put in. The girl in the white dress kept stirring, and it looked like the pot was not appetizing at all. After that, the girl took out another pot, put water in it, and boiled it, then added a pack of instant noodles and dried noodles, and some vegetables. This pot looked much better than the previous one. She put 6 bowls of noodles on the table and 3 bowls from the stew pot. She picked up one of the bowls of porridge and squatted in the corner to drink it bit by bit. Seeing this, several other people also went over to eat. The women drank porridge and the men ate noodles. At that moment, a sense of class emerged. After finishing the meal, everyone sat on the ground and started chatting. Red Hair asked Fatty, "Boss, how long are we going to stay here? Where are we going next?" The fat man wiped his mouth and said after a moment of silence, "Keep going north. I heard that the government has taken control of the situation and we can get food." Red Hair continued, "Boss, even though we don't have to worry about food and drink when we go to the government's territory, we don't have freedom. Do you think we can still live freely outside like we do now, like?" He didn't finish his words, but his gaze turned to the girl in the white dress with a hint of vulgarity in his eyes. He continued, "Besides, this place is quite quiet, with no village in front and no shop behind, and with a mountain at the back. It's not a problem to grow some weeds. If we go down the mountain occasionally to get some food, we should be able to survive and not starve to death. There are few people and zombies around here. If we repair the door outside, at least we won't have to worry as much as we do outside. This place is suitable for hiding. Hey, little red hair, you have good taste." After hearing this, the fat man fell into deep thought. I had just found a novel to read when I heard some noise. The short man with a tuft of beard grabbed the woman in white by the feet and dragged her behind the door. He untied his belt, knowing what he wanted to do. In the end times, there is no internet, no electricity, no mobile phones, and everything is returned to its original state. I could hear her crying and whimpering behind the door, and I couldn't help but turn my head. I didn't dare rush out. After all, I was a girl. There were so many people outside. If I went out, I would be walking into a trap. In the last days, I know that I cannot be a saint, and I also know how to protect myself. These women seemed to already know their fate, and the short-haired girl in the denim jacket began to tremble noticeably. Damn it, this idiot Lao C can't hold it in so soon. The fat man stood up and waved to the woman in the tight dress, who immediately walked over and hugged him. The other 4 men began to stare at the remaining woman with lustful eyes. The short man who entered the door at the beginning was almost done, and the other 2 men stood up and walked towards the woman in white. 2 more men surrounded the short-haired girl and also started. It was very dark at night, and the sound of insects chirping outside reminded me that this was still the human world, but the roars, cries, and screams all around me made me feel like I was in hell. I dared not look at the surveillance camera anymore and could only stare blankly at the white wall opposite me. What was wrong with this world? Was it my destiny as a woman to endure all this? I started to feel physically unwell and couldn't help but vomit into a trash can. I've always thought that I am actually lucky because I have never experienced such insults and torture in my previous life or this life. I had nightmares all night. In my dreams, I was bitten by zombies in my previous life, and I dreamed that those girls were reaching out to me for help in the abyss. When I woke up, it was already past 9 in the morning. The group of people upstairs were no longer in the room. I checked the surveillance camera and saw that the men went to look for necessities nearby. The women went to the nearby mountains to look for edible wild vegetables. 3 days passed like this. During these 3 days, I observed that Fatty was the leader of the entire team. Red Hair was the one who came up with bad ideas and was also the person Fatty trusted the most, so he was considered the second in command. Everyone else had to obey the orders of the 2 of them. A slightly older woman wearing a tight skirt, probably the fat man's woman. Everyone called her Sister Hong. She only served the fat man. The remaining 2 women were in a much worse situation. The long-haired woman in a white dress was called Xiaoyan. She was taciturn and had a hollow look in her eyes. She seemed to have been in this team for a long time. Xiaoka, a neat and tidy girl with short hair, looks like a new member, with hope of survival flickering in her eyes. Although these 3 girls were in the dark, I felt that they didn't seem to communicate much, and everyone had their own ideas. Sister Hong seemed to be afraid that these 2 people would come to power, and was always on guard against them. Xiaoko often asked the 2 young men, Lao Wu and Lao Lu, when to go north. Xiaoyan never speaks or communicates with anyone. When she has something to do, she does something. When she has nothing to do, she squats in a corner, hugs her legs, and looks outside. The thin man in the team is called the 3rd brother, and the short guy with a mustache is the 4th brother. I hid in the basement every day to observe them, fearing that I would be discovered. There were so many of them that some clues would always be discovered. Deep down, I hope they can leave sooner, or even better, never come back. Contrary to expectations, this afternoon, fatty and red hair, told everyone that they were not planning to go north. They thought this place was good, there were not many zombies, there were places to hide, and they could defend and retreat. Hearing this, Xiaoyan was obviously stunned for a moment. Her mouth slightly opened, as if she wanted to say something, but she finally lowered her head. Xiaoku, who was standing next to her, couldn't help but stand up and ask, why? The red-haired man slapped her in the face and said, Alpaca, you little idiot asked why. Whatever the boss says is true, don't think you are something. After saying that, he spitted directly at Xiaoku, who was so scared that he trembled. Only Sister Hong said in a strangled voice, we can survive, all thanks to the leadership of the boss. Look how dangerous it is outside. We can survive here because the boss is smart. After saying that, Sister Hong did not forget to cast a seductive glance at Scarbrother. Flattery never fails. I really admire Sister Hong's ability. Judging from what Scarbrother said, he probably intends to take root here. Then, don't I have to be careful all the time? This is not a solution. I have to find a way to make them leave. While I was thinking about this, I didn't notice the hatred in Xiaoyan's eyes. Just like that, 2 days later, life seemed to have returned to normal. I hid in the basement, not daring to make any noise, thinking about how to drive these people away. At this time, Xiaoyan came into the toilet with a bag of things. She opened the bag, fried the contents into juice, and put them into small plastic bags. I watched her fiddle with it, not understanding what she was doing. As long as it doesn't involve exposing me, I don't care about other things. In the evening, I was still hesitating about what to eat, and they had already started eating upstairs. A pot of mushroom soup with some wild vegetables and bamboo shoots from the mountain cooked together, and a little salt and soy sauce added for seasoning. Xiaoyan quietly put some other things into the pot, including a handful of millet, and continued cooking. The men shared the food, while the women continued to drink the wild vegetable soup. I had no appetite, so I picked up the iced coffee in the space and the barbecued pork rice and shrimp dumplings I took from the Hong Kong restaurant. Above is the end of the world, and below is a peaceful refuge. The sound of insects continues to echo. Since humans stopped working, the trees have grown more dense, and there are many more insects and other creatures. There might be wolves, bears, or even zombies in this valley. The entertainment activities of that group of people are really nothing but the most primitive ones. So, the night began again, with the girls screaming and the men cursing. When will this day end? Suddenly, I saw Lao Si grabbing Xiaoyan's hair and trying to drag her to a corner. But he suddenly foamed at the mouth and his whole body began to twitch. Red Hair and Scarbrother were about to go over to see what was going on when they discovered that something was wrong with them too. They were spitting out white foam and their whole body was twitching. Several other men began to experience the same symptoms. I stared at the surveillance camera, not wanting to miss any details. Xiaoyan suddenly stood up, picked up a big rock from the corner, and smashed it hard on Lao Si's head. Go to hell. You die. You rubbish die. While cursing, she hit the fourth brother's head with a stone until his brains splattered all over the ground. Xiaoyan's face was also splattered with blood, but she seemed to have no intention of stopping and continued to smash it frantically. It was not until the fourth brother's head was almost smashed off that she stopped for a moment, got up, walked towards the red-haired man, and continued to hit him on the head. Hong Jie and Xiaoku were both stunned. By the time they realized what was happening, Xiaoyan had almost beaten Red Hair to death. The only ones left were the gentleman with glasses, Lao Lu, and Scarbrother. Sister Hong quickly protected Scarbrother and yelled at Xiaoyan, Are you crazy? What will we do if we kill them all? What if we encounter zombies or other people? Xiaoyan didn't say anything, just glanced at her and then walked towards Lao Lu. As soon as she walked to Lao Lu, Xiaoku rushed over and said, Lao Lu didn't bully you. Why do you have to kill him? Xiaoyan sneered and said, Should I thank him for not bullying me? Wasn't he a bystander? Wasn't he making trouble nearby? Isn't he one of them? Didn't he play jokes on my body before? Oh, are you in love with him? Xiaoyan looked at Xiaoku with a sneer in her eyes. Xiaoku's face changed and his scalp tingled. I just think it's too cruel. Without them, we can't reach the shelter at all. Just when Xiaoku was still saying some saintly words, Xiaoyan suddenly rushed over and smashed Lao Yo's head. Ah, Xiaoku screamed like a soprano. Idiot. Although this place is sparsely populated, nothing is absolute. When I lived alone before, I try not to make too much noise. In addition to watching the farce in the villa, I also had to pay attention to the surrounding situation at all times. Suddenly, my heart tightened, and 1,000 horses galloped through my mind. What sin had I committed? My villa had become a haunted house. Is there anyone who can help? I beat my chest and stamped my feet. I wanted to cry, but I had no tears. Xiaoyan was like having a seizure. She would kill any god or Buddha she met. Now only Sister Hong and Scar Brother were left. Xiaoyan put down the stone, picked up the knife that Hong Mao had hung on his waist, and walked towards Sister Hong and Scar Brother. As soon as Sister Hong opened her mouth, Xiaoyan stabbed her to death. Then, she stabbed Scar Brother a dozen times until he was no longer breathing. She stood up and walked toward Xiaoko. Xiaoko was so scared that she said, "Don't kill me, don't kill me." Before she finished her words, a roar suddenly came from the foot of the mountain. Oh my god, my scalp suddenly went numb. Here they come. Here they come. These unlucky people are here again. I cursed in my heart and was so panicked that I didn't even dare to swallow my saliva. I could only watch outside. It might be the smell of blood from those men or the loud noise that attracted the zombies. Now, the only people left alive are the crazy Xiaoyan, the soprano Xiaoka, and me, who is hiding in the basement. But I'm not afraid. After all, my hiding place is very safe and the zombies can't find the entrance at all. Xiaoyan reacted quickly, started searching for useful supplies, and quickly went upstairs. Xiaoku also reacted and helped Xiao Yan get the supplies. They ran to the third floor and locked up all the rooms on the balcony and rooftop. Just as they were closing the windows, the roar was already before them. A large group of zombies were tearing apart the corpse downstairs, and they licked the blood clean. The whimpering, roaring, and chewing sounds made every cell in my body tremble. This reminded me of the scene when I died in my previous life. I didn't watch how the zombies ate, but stared at the two women upstairs. One was sitting on the ground with an expressionless face, and the other was leaning against the wall with trembling legs. Xiaoka's situation is not good either. The downstairs is full of zombies, and the only living person is a madman. Alas, I'm also very pitiful. My family was not rich to begin with, and now it is even worse. Everything was fine, and I could have lived a quiet life, but I ended up meeting a bunch of psychopaths. In this situation, more than a week passed, and the weather gradually returned to normal, no longer so outrageously hot, and even rained a few times. I finally had water in the extra-large reservoir on the balcony, and the two people upstairs were not so hard-pressed anymore. The zombies downstairs were still wandering around and hadn't left. The weather had cooled down too quickly recently, from high temperatures to 5 or 6 degrees in an instant. It was fine during the day, with the sun shining, so it wasn't too cold. But at night, the north wind was biting. I wasn't in a hurry, because I knew it would get even colder. The arrival of freezing means the end of the zombie era. Due to the low temperature, the zombies' movements will become slow, making them easier to clean up and shoot. I continued to observe the two women upstairs as if they were guinea pigs. They began to lack food and clothes, especially the summer clothes they had worn at the beginning were no longer suitable. The room where they hid was where I used to live. When I left, I'd already wiped away all traces of myself. There were still sheets, quilt covers, and a small quilt left in the closet, and a box of compressed biscuits in the closet. Xiaoyan and Xiaoka immediately put on the sheets and quilts. When I thought Xiaoyan didn't care about Xiaoka's life or death, she actually gave half of the compressed biscuits to Xiaoka. This surprised me a little, and I sighed softly, but I didn't have a heart of saintliness and wanted to expose myself. It became increasingly colder in the next few days, as if we had suddenly entered winter, and the temperature dropped sharply. As usual, I watched variety shows, drank tea, looked at the two people upstairs, and looked at the zombies around me. In fact, the activities of the zombies around have begun to slow down, and their sensitivity to sounds and smells has also decreased. It seems that the time for a new life will come soon. The two people upstairs are cold and hungry. Without enough food, it is difficult for their bodies to maintain body temperature. As the days passed, there were sounds of gunfire from towns in the distance and helicopters taking off. The rescue operation began, with the army moving from towns to suburbs and villages to gradually confirm the number of survivors. A look of surprise appeared on Xiaoka's face, but Xiaoyan remained expressionless, as if everything around her had nothing to do with her, and she was still pulling at her dirty clothes. After all, people always have physiological needs. As a woman, menstrual period is unavoidable. If you don't wash your hair for a long time, there will always be a strange smell on your body. As time went on, they were almost at their limit. We were in the mountains, and almost no one came. The big groups usually gathered in towns or densely populated villages. We're not their cleaning focus, but the road is accessible and there's a sign pointing to this community at the foot of the mountain, so it's not difficult to find us. On the third day, a small army drove a military truck and arrived. When the truck drove in, I immediately turned off all electronic devices except the surveillance camera. After all, this villa is where I live. I don't want to go out and deal with people outside. I want to stay here. What if I was found to have so many supplies? I still understand the principle of being guilty of possessing a treasure. To me, the presence or absence of zombies was no big deal, but to the two women upstairs, it was a different story. When two military vehicles came in, Xiaoka could no longer hold back and wanted to rush out. Xiaoyan held her down tightly. After all, there were zombies downstairs. Xiaoka couldn't help it. Just like a person in the desert seeing water, his head was filled with urgency. I'm here. Come and save me. Come and save me. Xiaoka broke free from Xiaoyan and ran to the balcony shouting. When the zombies heard the sound, they immediately rushed towards the villa. When the army heard the cry for help, they immediately used guns and grenades to clear the nearby zombies. The zombies nowadays were no match for those well-trained soldiers. After a few hours, the situation was under control. As soon as the soldiers came in, Xiaoku came down from upstairs impatiently. Save me. Save me. I can sleep with you as many times as you want. As she spoke, she undressed. When she rushed in front of the leading officer, she was almost naked. The officer took a few steps back, frowning, his face serious. It is our duty to save the people. Don't worry. We will take you out and put on your clothes. After he finished speaking, he turned around and told his men to continue searching while he went to other places in the villa. As expected, all the good-looking ones had to be handed over to the country. The officer was really handsome, with a righteous look on his face, a tall figure, and his breath seemed full of sexual tension. I stared at the surveillance camera for a long time and was stunned, but he seemed to have noticed my presence, and he stared at the camera I had placed outside to spy on. Damn, I shuddered. Soldiers are really sharp. I quickly adjusted my mood, relaxed, and looked back at the two women. Xiaoyan sat quietly aside, while Xiaoka was not dressed properly, with his shoulders exposed, and his eyes kept seducing a soldier next to him. Xiaoka must have been stimulated and is now a little abnormal. Before, she could exchange her body for food and clothing, but now when she sees people, her first reaction is to use her body to exchange for food. I really couldn't bear to look at it. Because of the long-term hunger, her and Xiaoyan's bodies have become like skeletons covered with skin. Her smell might be really strong. Several soldiers nearby frowned and kept backing away. Just as everyone was sorting out supplies, a red shadow suddenly rushed toward a nearby soldier. Xiaoyan reacted almost instinctively, quickly pulling the soldier away, blocking herself in front, and trying to put her hand against the neck of the female zombie in red. Xiaoka was so frightened that she quickly hugged the soldier next to her and pretended to be scared and asked for help. The soldier was about to take out his pistol and kill the zombie, but was blocked by Xiaoku and missed the opportunity. Xiaoyan had been hungry for a long time and had little strength left, and soon the red-clothed zombie bit her neck. Gunshots were heard, and the officer rushed in, hitting the red zombie with one bullet. But Xiaoyan had already been infected. I felt a sharp pain in my heart. I really feel sorry for this girl. As a bystander, it's really heartbreaking. She should have had a good ending, and she will soon have an end. I looked carefully and found that the zombie in red was actually Sister Hong. She didn't die when Xiaoyan pushed her away, but turned into a zombie and kept wandering around the room. The soldier's arm was scratched by Sister Hong, but the officer cut off his arm at a glance. Blood gushed out, and the officer ordered the team members to cover the blood with sand and then tie the wound with a belt. So handsome! I couldn't help but sigh in my heart. Maybe it's an occupational disease. I feel that his movements are full of charm when watching the surveillance. Suddenly, Xiaoku was stimulated and screamed. It seemed that her mental state was not normal, and the continuous stimulation made her emotions completely out of control. As night fell, the tension in the air grew thicker. The soldier with the broken arm was more seriously injured. The wound continued to bleed, and he began to have a fever again. In the end times, medicine was in short supply, and they didn't carry any with them. This place was remote, and it was late, so they didn't risk going out to look for medicine. Just when everyone was extremely anxious, the officer frowned and said, "I'm going to the camp to get medicine. You guys keep an eye on him." "Captain, it's too dangerous. Our eyesight is poor at night. If a group of zombies rush over, how can you handle it alone?" A big-headed soldier blocked him. I sighed and thought, I've been alive for so long, the medicine in my hand is of little use to me, but it can really save the lives of the injured. I had originally planned to wait until the zombies had all passed before going out, but now that it seemed like everything was basically safe, there was no point in continuing to hide. Moreover, these people are different. They took up arms to save others. I struggled for a while, then found the antipyretics, iodine, anesthetics, alcohol, gauze, and the antibiotics I bought at a high price in my space. I also took some compressed biscuits, instant foods, clean water, a few blankets, and a thick coat for Xiaoka. Of course, I also brought a dagger with me, just in case. After I was ready, I climbed out through the passage that had not been used for a long time and entered the courtyard. Looking around, I saw an argument going on inside. Some people wanted to leave, while others tried to stop them. As I approached, before I could say anything, a man suddenly jumped up beside me. I hurriedly shouted, "Hi." But just as I finished speaking, the man didn't stop and pushed me down. I couldn't help but complain in my heart. He died before he could accomplish his mission. I closed my eyes tightly and put my hands to protect my head, preparing for the impact. As a result, the figure turned around and pressed under me. I fell on him and hit his teeth with my forehead. I was so shocked. This wasn't an idle drama. How could there be such an unattractive scene? My head hurt. It was so embarrassing. I opened my eyes and saw that it was the officer. His eyes were like sharp swords staring at me, and I broke out in a cold sweat. I quickly climbed up from him and walked quickly into the room. Everyone looked at me in blank stare. I raised my hand and said hello, "Hi, good evening." I smiled a little awkwardly, a really fake smile. I took out the medicine and handed it to the officer. "These should help you." I looked down and saw that the young man was pale, looked like he was no more than 18 years old, had a dry and cracked mouth, and was sweating. "What's his name?" I asked, turning to the officer. The soldier who just fell in the bushes had a blade of grass in his hair. I stood on tiptoe and helped him pull the grass out. He was stunned and stared at me. "There's grass on your head." I held the grass in my hand. The soldier next to me couldn't help laughing. "Thank you, ma'am. My name is Yang Sui, and he is our superior Li Jibua. The one with a broken arm is in you, and the one guarding next to him is Lin Feng." After saying that, he bumped Li Jibua's shoulder. "Tang Hua, he's not in good condition. I brought some antibiotics. See if you can use them. It's best to clean his wound again, otherwise it will be troublesome if it gets infected. I also brought some food. You can eat some." As he said this, he took out the food. I was about to take it, but Xiaoka suddenly snatched a pack of instant noodles and started to wolf it down. She was still disheveled. I handed her the clothes and went into the kitchen to get the pot. This was my home, so of course I knew where everything was. I poured water into the pot, put in instant noodles and some bacon, then threw in some compressed biscuits, let them melt, and handed them to Lin Feng, asking him to feed in you. They were stunned for a moment, and I couldn't help laughing. "This is my house. Do you want to see the property certificate?" Yang Cheng shook his head awkwardly, sat next to me, and asked, "When can we eat?" Xiao Ke threw away the instant noodles in her hand, put her hand in the pot to fish it out, and ended up getting burned. I guess she might have some mental problems. The instant noodles were cooked quickly, and I served them each a bowl. Each of the three men had a packet, except for Yu, who was still in a coma. I couldn't act too rich, because I knew that it was a crime to possess a treasure. I picked up the half-eaten noodles that Xiaoka had left and cooked them again for her. One bowl for each person. "What about you?" I looked up and found Li Jibua staring at me. "I'm not hungry, I won't eat," I said, and began to look around my villa. Seeing the mess in the house, my heart was bleeding. Li Jibua kept staring at me. I went to the outside of the house, and he followed me out. "It's dangerous to be alone," he said, still staring at me. I hadn't seen anyone for a long time, and I wasn't used to being around people. I wanted to be alone for a while, so I ignored him. He still stared at me silently. I felt a little uncomfortable and couldn't help asking, "Why are you looking at me?" "I'm just curious. Why did you suddenly show up? It looks like you haven't been affected by the apocalypse. You're clean as a whim. You can even buy these drugs that are not available on the market." I turned around and said, "I'm very rich. What can't money buy? Don't you think you should thank me and leave quietly?" After that, I also stopped where I was, staring at him, and slowly walked towards him. He was very tall, and my head just reached his chin. He looked down at me, and I looked up at him, our shadows on the ground almost overlapping. He suddenly turned his head and took a few steps back. I smiled, walked back to the others, grabbed a blanket, and leaned against the pillar. If I'd been more careful, I might have noticed that Li Jibua's ears were slowly turning red. and you felt much better after taking the medicine. The sweat on his head also decreased. The antipyretic medicine was effective. It shouldn't be a problem for him to survive the night. The sky gradually brightened. No one slept well tonight. Everyone took turns to take care of Anyu, of course, except Xiaoka. I didn't sleep well because of the change of environment. In the early morning, I just closed my eyes for a while, and when I opened my eyes, I saw that they were ready to go. Yang Sui asked me if I would go with them, but I refused. I said I still wanted to stay here. Yang Sui respected my decision and said that they might never see me again after this trip. They still have to continue clearing out zombies along the way. I wish them safe travels. Li Jibo looked at me for a while, as if he wanted to talk to me, so I walked over. You don't want to go to the camp with us? That's fine, thanks, take care. I smiled, waved to him, and watched them leave. The morning sun shines all over the earth, and the boy's back is coated with gold and glittering. There are always people who carry the burden for us, and there are always some people who sacrifice their lives for our peaceful life. They deserve our respect and gratitude. I continue to return to the underground and wait for the flowers to bloom.